Hello, moderately loyal viewers. I would first like to apologize for my lack of posting. I've been a bit more than busy these past few months, with a hint of laziness. Anyway, hate me later, we got a movie to discuss. So, I spend far too much free time watching movie reviews, analyses, and retrospectives on YouTube. The common phrase I see in these videos, in their titles, their thumbnails, and overall message is underrated. Given the rise of homemade media reviews and how easy it is to put your voice out there on the internet, many people have been using the term underrated to describe many films and TV series that weren't commonly discussed before. Hell, I'd even go as far to say that these types of videos changed some movies from underrated to, rated, I guess? One of these films is a definite part of this trope and has been discussed quite a bit on social media. I'd go as far to say that this particular film may not even be underrated anymore. In the past few years, it's gained belated but well-deserved attention. I am happy to say that this movie has been discussed and reviewed out of obscurity. But I don't care, I'm still gonna talk about it. This movie is Disney's 2001 overlooked epic, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. So yes, a lot of people have already talked about this movie to death, and even more people seem to love it. So much like my Wish review, I'm going to do my absolute best to say original things and not piggyback off of other reviews. This may be hard though because, again, a lot of people have talked about this movie due to a recent resurgence in popularity. If you asked anyone if they loved this movie in 2009, I doubt very many people would have reacted as positively as people today. I'm not saying this movie had no fans back then, but again, with the rise of social media, a lot more people have been talking about it, which is great. One more thing before we dive in, unlike my previous review, I will not be going through the entire movie summarizing the plot. Rather, I'm gonna break it down piece by piece and give my thoughts on each subject. With that out of the way, here's why Atlantis is an underrated banger. And obviously there will be full spoilers for the movie, so, just, warning you now. Alright, so the characters are a great, yet slightly disappointing aspect of the film. On one hand, almost every character is likable and interesting to a degree, or at least fun to watch. On the other hand though, not all of them are developed enough to really be considered three-dimensional, which is a shame, because man, this film had quite possibly the best set of side characters in a Disney film. Our lead character is Milo Thatch, voiced by Marty McFly himself, Michael J. Fox. He is a cartographer and linguist from Washington, D.C. We learn that he was adopted by his grandfather, Thaddeus Thatch, at a young age, and they both had an obsession with proving the existence of the lost city of Atlantis. Even though having a relatable underdog as your main character is far from a first for Disney, I find Milo rather endearing. I feel that a lot of the best Disney films lack a protagonist that the audience can truly relate to. Many Disney films have a main character that may be outcast or want more in life, but they normally have some sort of trait that makes them a bit too perfect for many people to relate to. Let's look at Belle. Even though she wants more from life, she still has a happy life with her loving father and friends in her safe hometown. Hercules
Read me a book, would you, Dada? Zeus, once upon a time.
is an outsider because of his strength, but once again, he has a loving family, and his great strength helps him become a hero. Simba lost his father, but almost immediately after found a new adopted family and lived happily for years. But Milo is completely alone. He lost his parents, his grandfather just died, his job put him in the basement to be their pseudo-boiler technician, and because they find him annoying. If any of my coworkers are watching, you know that you wish you can do the exact same thing to me. I mean, the disrespect he receives from the museum is so tragic it's almost hilarious. Okay, it is hilarious. They rescheduled his meeting to propose an expedition to find Atlantis and specifically chose to alert him when it was too late. Even after Milo quits his job, the museum curator still throws shade at both him and his late grandfather. Milo then proceeds to go home to his gloomy apartment where he lives by himself. Well, save for his cat, but still. I mean, this movie really went out of its way to make its protagonist completely alone and down on his luck Peter Parker style. But all jokes aside, the movie wants to check all relatability boxes. I mean, he's lost loved ones, he's not respected at work, and he lives alone and is barely getting by. Also, this part is more of a personal factor, but come on guys, he's a skinny, fast-spoken nerd, a decent self-insert for myself. It may be cheap to make your main protagonist relatable by making them miserable, but hey, it works. And aside from the relatability factor, Milo is still pretty likable. Though he is largely an intellectual, he doesn't come across as condescending. Though he's a nerd who has never adventured before, he's confident enough to not come across as whiny or useless to the audience. If I had to criticize anything, however, he's not quite interesting or unique enough for me to say he's three-dimensional or one of Disney's all-time best leads. He's just missing that one more zing factor for me to say he's a perfect lead, but other than that, he's likable and you want to see him succeed. His emotional moments hit, his heroic moments are epic, and it's genuinely interesting and cool to see him use his intellect to pave the way to Atlantis and discover the mysteries of the city and their lost knowledge. He's a little white saviory, but I don't think I'm qualified enough to thoroughly or respectfully cover that issue. His vocal performance by Michael J. Fox has been criticized for being kinda weird and awkward, but I think it fits perfectly. I mean, guys, he's an awkward character. Yeah, some of his line reads aren't amazing, but when I listen to Milo, I can't even picture Fox in the recording booth because he fits the character so well. So yeah, Milo is pretty good. He's a tad bit dull, but still a solid lead. Okay, so Kaeya is the princess of Atlantis, and Okay, in all seriousness, Kaeya is a great character. She doesn't get quite enough to do in my opinion, but she's still a lot of fun to watch, plus she serves as a fairly interesting factor in one of the film's main plot points. My favorite part about Kaeya is that she's similar to other Disney princesses, but different enough in a crucial way. A lot of past Disney princesses butt heads with their authority figures, usually about them not being able to go on their adventures or being forced into an arranged marriage. However, Kaeya's conflict with her father is not only tied to the plot, but deeply tied to her position as a princess. I love that she argues with her father because she fears for the safety and the life of her kingdom. The people are slowly starting to suffer after thousands of years of their life force dying. The king is stubborn and claims that the people are content, though he knows the city is fading. Kaeya is trying to do anything in her power to save her people, but she can't because of the knowledge of Atlantis is disappearing. We'll get into that later. I love Kaeya because her motivations are tied to the lives and needs of others rather than her own desires. She's like Asha, but done right and from 22 years before. Her naivete isn't insufferable like other Disney characters, and her care for her people is very compelling. Not to mention she's a badass. I kinda wish she had a few more fight scenes. I do have a somewhat major gripe with Kaeya's character, however, though it makes sense for the plot and is crucial for the story. I do wish the movie used her as a character more and as a plot device less. When the crystal chooses Kaeya as a host to protect itself, she does nothing for the next chunk of the film because she's in a glowy magic trance phase. Again, this is a crucial part of the plot, so I don't wish the movie changed this, I just wish we got to see more of Kaeya before the crystal took her. So in the end, Kaeya is an underrated Disney princess, and a good addition to the film. I cannot in good conscience say she's a perfect character, but this isn't the fault of her writing or development. But yeah, I like Kaeya, and First and foremost, I think we all know that the best part of King Nadok's character is the vocal performance by the late great Leonard Nimoy. I mean, come on, that voice was meant for acting and playing wise and powerful characters.
Our weapons allow us to remove obstacles we may encounter.
Some obstacles cannot be removed with a mere show of force. We vowed to eliminate all knowledge of the crystal and swore never to use it again.
King Nadok doesn't have the most screen time in the film, but he makes his presence known when he shows up. I just love the detail when the team first arrives in Atlantis and King Nadok immediately sees through Rourke's bullshit and tells them all to leave. Yeah, he does let them stay for one night, but come on guys, the movie has to happen. It also proves that even though he's assertive and stern, he's in the end a caring man who cares for life above all else, even if he is too blind to see dangers. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, okay, I literally didn't notice that till I was writing the script. It can be a little frustrating how he seemingly ignores the good of his people to keep the crystal hidden away, but you can't blame him. He acknowledges that he made a mistake trying to control the crystal, which brought the Great Floods in the first place. King Nadok has every right to want to hide the crystal away, even though it leads to the slow decay of his people and their culture. He's just trying to prevent another disaster that would destroy the city and possess Kita just like it did to his wife millennia ago. It's heartbreaking to see this once powerful man so weak and barely clinging to life, perpetually stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the safety of his people. The most he can do is just try to keep his people safe with what little time he has left, which is what we see when he tries to send away the explorer team. Though his decision to let them stay leads to his death, it also leads to the survival of both his city and his daughter. I believe King Kashyyykim Nadok is an underappreciated character and deserves more recognition for his vocal portrayal alone, on top of his good writing. Okay, Whitmore is just plain funny. I've always loved the funny and eccentric old rich guy caricature in movies, and I think Whitmore fits the bill well. Whitmore is a rich and eccentric philanthropist who is best friends with Thaddeus Thatch. He's the one funding the expedition to Atlantis as a way to settle a bet with his recently deceased friend in an attempt to keep his word to discover Atlantis and prove that Thaddeus wasn't crazy for believing in the city's existence. He's kind of the reason the whole movie happens. On top of this, his funny moments are really funny, and he has a surprisingly emotional moment too. This is when he expresses his regret of Thaddeus dying a broken man, looked down upon by the archaeological community, and never knowing if Atlantis truly existed. I love how he has prehistoric fish in the tank in his office, hinting at the once thought to be extinct city of Atlantis. I love his vocal performance by John Mahoney. I love the detail of him crossing his fingers in the sub launches, showing that beneath all of his confidence and charisma, he's still a little scared. And I just love how he had a model of the sub on an underground table waiting to be raised for dramatic effect when he deemed Milo worthy and ready for the expedition. I mean, come on, that's funny and plain cool. So yeah, Preston Whitmore is a fun character with some great moments and details, and unlike other characters in the movie where I wish we saw more of them, I think he had the perfect amount of screen time. Okay, hot take alert, but I think Helga might be my least favorite of the side characters in this movie, but I figured I'd mention her now. After the first half of the movie, she doesn't really do much at all, and what she does do isn't really anything all that special. After her weirdly sexual introduction scene where she delivers Milo to Whitmore, she's just kind of an extension of the main villain Rourke. She just stands around looking tough and scary, she gives orders, and doesn't really do anything at all until the end of the movie when she's on her literal deathbed. Honestly, for the second half of the film, until the climax, you can kind of just replace her with one of Rourke's faceless goons. Hell, maybe even Rourke himself, and not all that much changes. I get it, she's a side villain and she isn't meant to be all that special or compelling, but come on movie, at least give her something. There are plenty of Disney movies where the secondary villain is just the main villain's goon or right hand, but they usually have something interesting about them to make them memorable or give them a purpose to exist.
I just hear that name and I shut up. Mufasa! Ooh. Do it again. Mufasa! Mufasa!
I'm surrounded by idiots.
I mean, just look at Pain and Panic. Yeah, they aren't three-dimensional or groundbreaking characters or anything, but they significantly change and affect the movie, whether it be in terms of plot development or comedic purposes. If they aren't doing anything important, they're still entertaining. When Helga isn't doing anything important, I just kind of forget that she's there. Again, she becomes relevant when she dies, in an epic way, might I add. But I genuinely think fans of this movie remember her so fondly for, well, obvious reasons. So in the end, not a terrible side villain, just kind of a forgettable one. Okay, I know you were all waiting for this. I saved the best for last. The main mercenary team is by far the best set of protagonistic side characters in a Disney movie, period. Lion King has great side characters, but come on guys. This team had so much charm and unspoken character that I can't help but fanboy over them. Cookie doesn't really do that much, but hey, he's really funny. He barely has any lines, but almost all of them are hilarious and quotable.
What is this?
That would be lettuce.
Lettuce? Lettuce?
It's a vegetable, Cookie. The men need the 4 basic food groups.
I got you 4 basic food groups. Beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard.
Not much to say, just a funny cowboy dude. Rest in peace, Jim Varney. Packard, once again, is a character who doesn't do too much, but when she's this funny, I can't help but love her. I just love the running gag at the beginning of the film when even in times of literal emergency with disaster impending, she can't be bothered to care and is just on the phone with her friend. Also, I can't help but think I'd be pretty similar to Packard if I were on an adventure like this.
Looks like all our chances for survival rest with you, Mr. Thatch. You and that little book.
We're all gonna die.
I mean, come on, that's peak character right there. Okay, so though Mole is my least favorite of the main group, he's not the worst. He's got some funny moments and has really impressive animation. And of course, his vocal performance is top tier. Corey Burton never misses. I mean, who else can claim that they're Count Dooku, Cad Bane, the Ghost Host, and like half the cast of Transformers Animated? That being said, of the main 4 members of the team, Mole is definitely the least compelling. This is definitely intentional though. There's a scene where most of the side characters take turns telling their backstories and motivations, but Mole doesn't and just kinda does his own thing, which the movie plays off as a joke. You might be thinking, well, the movie clearly didn't try to make him deep or compelling, he's just supposed to be comic relief, you're not supposed to be invested in him. And to that I say, you're right, that means I'm not invested in him, so I don't really care about him that much in the face of danger or emotional moments. I mean, right before the climax, it's legitimately heartbreaking to see Milo's friends take a stance against him, and you can see the regret and indecisiveness in their expressions. But Mole's just happy to have a gun and be violent. And it's not inspiring or exciting when he sides with Milo before the climax. Plus, not all of his jokes landed for me, and I occasionally found him annoying. Still, I don't hate Mole, he's alright. Also, I'm not sure if it was intentional that they made the French guy a geologist who burrows in dirt and is obsessed with filth, but I'm not complaining. Okay, so now we're getting to the good stuff. A lot of times when I hear people praise this movie, they often talk about how likable and fun the side characters are, and I think these next 3 are the ones that embody that. These next 3 are the ones that I think people first think about when they praise this movie's characters. So here we have Vinnie, and I can't lie, he's probably my favorite character in the movie simply because of how funny he is. His deadpan delivery is right up my comedic alley. I also really appreciate that for once in an animated film, the Italian guy doesn't have a thick Brooklyn accent or an over-the-top stereotypical voice that sounds like Mario or the guys from Lady and the Tramp. His backstory is also very funny and makes a lot of sense for his character and motivations. I genuinely felt emotional weight when he sided with Rourke, and especially when he rejoined Milo at the end. And once again, he's really funny.
It's gotta be half a mile high at least. It must have taken thousands of years to carve this thing.
Hey, look, I made a bridge. It only took me like, what, 10 seconds? 11 tops.
I don't have too much to say about Audrey, she's just a fun and charming side character, and she's certainly more compelling than the other mercenaries. I do like how she's the first and most prominent of the mercenaries to side with Milo and the Atlanteans for the climax. It makes the most sense for her character. Like the other main mercs, aside from Mole, she is given more time to interact with and grow closer to Milo. But in my opinion, Audrey grows the closest with him the most realistically. I just love the scene where she and Milo share stories about their families. It's just sweet and makes you feel for both of them. For me, it hits the hardest and is the most exciting when Audrey changes her mind and sides with Milo. It carried the most emotional weight out of all the portrayals. Plus, she's just fun. She's cool and she's tough, but she's still the soft side. Much better than your average late 90s, early 2000s tough girl stereotype. I like the part of her backstory when she says her dad wanted sons, one of which to be a boxer and the other to be a mechanic in her shop, but instead got 2 daughters, and then she says that her dad got what he wanted regardless. Wow, okay, I guess I had more to say about Audrey than I thought. But yeah, great character, I just wish we got to see a bit more of her. And here we have probably everyone's favorite, Joshua Sweet. Sweet is likable because of his simplicity. He's just a nice and caring guy, which is fitting considering he's a medic. I love how despite the fact he's a big hulking dude, he moves and talks really fast like a stereotypical small zippy cartoon character. He feels like Bulkhead and Bumblebee morph into one. This visual style is only enhanced by Phil Morris's excellent vocal performance. He brings a grand sense of comedy and emotion to the role. I just love his backstory, especially how he used his Native American medicine man knowledge to become an army medic after being drafted. His pep talk to Milo feels earned given his experience with Milo's grandfather, his hopeful demeanor, and his caring nature overall. In my opinion, Sweet is the best of the mercenary side characters and one of my favorite characters in the film, period. Okay, this next segment is a bit of a mixed bag. So this movie has some very ambitious and interesting visuals. This was in the era when 2D animated movies were incorporating CGI into the mix. Examples include Tarzan, Treasure Planet, Titan AE, Sinbad, Road to El Dorado, and Hercules. This was for better or worse. In some cases, like Tarzan, the CGI blends in perfectly with no major drawbacks. Other times, like in Treasure Planet, the CGI mostly holds up but has a few dated moments that aren't necessarily distracting. Then you have movies like Sinbad with distractingly bad CGI. Do you have to do this right now? Do you have to... Is this necessary for right now? Yeah, there you go, thank you. Atlantis kinda falls in the middle. The main thing about Atlantis is that it seemed to have a lot more CGI elements than other Disney movies at the time. That being said, it doesn't look all that dated save for a few scenes. My issue is that it seems like they were almost over-reliant on CGI for a good portion of the movie. But this isn't all bad. Given how much CGI there is and how well integrated it is, you almost forget that it's there and you get drawn into the film. So I'll give it a pass, especially since when the CGI looks good, it looks good! Aside from the CGI, the 2D animation is stunning. The actual movement of the characters and their expressions is fluid enough to be energetic, but doesn't come across as an overly zany and stretchy Tom and Jerry style cartoon. It gives the film energy while upholding its consistently darker tone. The only exceptions to this I can think come from Milo and Mole, who seem to be a bit more stretchy and expressive at times, but this works due to their personalities. Characters like Vinnie are fittingly less stretchy, but definitely not static. The action scenes are also well animated. There's a grand sense of excitement and energy that comes across as stimulating, but definitely not chaotic. The darker tone mixed with the actual death makes the action feel even more weighty outside of the visual flair. This movie also has a phenomenal and fairly unique art style for Disney. The characters all have a bit more realistic aesthetic compared to other Disney movies, but not enough where it looks boring and ugly like Pocahontas. Seriously guys, I cannot express how much I fucking hate Pocahontas. It feels like a comic book, especially with the thick outlines and the character framing and blocking. I honestly would love to see a comic adaptation and expansion of this movie. This was definitely intentional. Apparently the filmmakers and animators heavily studied the comic book Hellboy in an attempt to match and pay homage to that art style of those original comics. And you can see it, especially if you read Hellboy like me. The environments are stunning as well. Even scenes that are in a place as dull as a cave still have this sense of awe to them, which is only helped by the excellent directing and cinematography. And I can't not mention the lighting. Holy god, some of the lighting in this movie is next level. I mean, look at this shot. The fact that the closer the candle gets to the camera, the dimmer our characters get in the background. Ugh, I just can't get enough. And look at the scene in Milo's apartment. This feels like a classic noir thriller. We can tell that this movie just got serious and mysterious just by the lighting alone. Another thing I love is the clear and cut color palette. Most of the imagery surrounding the mercenaries mostly consists of browns, reds, yellows, and oranges. Meanwhile, almost all the imagery surrounding the Atlanteans is mostly gray, white, and blue. This helps cast an easy to distinguish visual tone of the characters and their current sides of the conflict. Okay, this one will be quick, but I love the tone and the darkness of this movie. It's not a It's not a full-blown war epic, but something about this film feels like it was trying to appeal to a more mature audience. The excessive and unapologetic amount of firearms both seen and used, the consistent death and destruction, and the surprisingly deep and mature themes and messages, ugh, I just love it! Overall, I'd say it fits in fairly well with the rest of the film. Though there is a lot of comedy and some silly moments, it never detracts or diminishes from the film's tone and feel, like some other Disney movies. Overall, I'd say this film has a decently dark and very consistent tone that helps draw the viewer in and keeps them locked in their seat. This segment will also be brief. Overall, the film has a very solid soundtrack. James Newton Howard really cooked with some of these scores. It all screams epic and exciting. Just hearing the theme for the sub as it launches puts you in a sense of awe and gets you giddy and excited to go on this adventure. My favorite piece of music in the film, however, has to be the track titled The Crystal Chamber. It's so powerful and bone-chilling, it's mystifying, it's an unsung banger. Seriously guys, go back and listen to this track again. It's truly spectacular. Also, this isn't super important, but I thought I should point out that this is the first Disney movie since The Black Cauldron to not feature any songs or musical numbers, save for the pop song at the end credits. I've seen a few people say they wish there were some pop songs sung during the film, but honestly I disagree. This film has a perfect tone and mood, and I'm not so sure if a pop song would have really fit at all here. But that's just me. All in all, a great soundtrack, James Newton Howard and Maya killed it. Once again, we have a bit of a mixed bag. It's not the story itself, that part is excellent. It's the pacing. I'm not going to go over the entire plot beat by beat. I'm just going to briefly explain the first half so I can transition into the pacing a little bit easier. The story itself isn't super complex, but it's fun and very interesting. The opening scene doesn't mess around, it gets right into it. We see the city of Atlantis being washed away by the sea. We also get a good look at the futuristic tech mixed with the ancient architecture and aesthetic of the Atlantean culture. The movie also hooks you by showing the Atlantean queen being taken as a host by the Crystal. The film then jumps forward to 1914 and we meet Milo. Milo is down on his luck and he's trying to get an expedition to Atlantis until he's recruited by Preston Whitmore and the adventure begins. Along the way, we get to see the perils of deep sea and underground traveling, and we also get to know our side characters. But I won't lie to you guys, this portion of the film is kind of my least favorite part. The montage of them traveling to Atlantis just goes on far too long. I understand that it's trying to show just how long and arduous this journey is, but it doesn't add much to the overall plot aside from a few funny gags. Because of how painfully long this section of the movie is, it kinda feels like we don't spend enough time in the actual city of Atlantis, nor do we have enough time to develop some of the themes. Okay, stick with me. I know I'm supposed to be praising the story, just let me get this part out quickly. One flaw I see in the film is the lack of some stakes and a bit of telling and not showing during the scenes when we're in Atlantis itself. Kaeya argues with her father, saying that the people are scavenging for food and barely clinging to life in a dying city, and the king doesn't deny this, but he says the people are content. Even though we're supposed to side with Kaeya, the movie doesn't do a great job of showing that the Atlanteans are struggling to survive. When we see the mercenaries exploring the city and dining with an Atlantean family, nothing really seems amiss. They seem to find enough food just fine and the people are happy. So I wish the film did a better job showcasing the struggle of the Atlanteans. I just wish we got to see them struggling to find food and more of the culture fading. It kinda reminds me of Wish and Lightyear. For those who watched my last video, you should remember this. The movie tells us about the conflict instead of showing it, which is kind of a no-go in my book. That being said, however, this isn't the worst example of telling not showing I've ever seen in a movie. And the film does not shy away from Kaeya not being able to read and relying on Milo's linguistics to learn more about the heart of the city. I also really like the visuals of the fish spaceship thingies being grown over with vines and foliage from not being used, so the movie evens out its faults with some good additions. I also love how this movie takes a tried and true plot point but adds more layers to it. In a lot of movies with some sort of unexplored or unknown culture and tribe, they're always facing physical threats, where people are dying out and they're under attack, and so on and so forth. But I love how this film changes that ever so slightly. The fact that Atlanteans aren't dying but forgetting their culture and history is a unique plot point that adds a different type of emotional depth to the film. To me, it's a lot more intriguing than the Atlanteans just being in physical danger. Yeah, the film ends with the climax of the Atlanteans' lives being in danger, but the road it took to get here was a lot more interesting. The mystery, the imagery, the music, and overall aesthetic of every scene involving the heart of Atlantis is just UGH! It's just so cool! It's one of the most ethereal things Disney has ever created, especially when the crystal takes Kaeya. It sends chills down my spine every time. Seeing the Atlanteans learn to use their old technology once again is inspiring and really feels earned. And I love that the movie just gives no shits in explaining how the Atlanteans speak English. The filmmakers just said, fuck it, make them speak every language because of an ancient root dialect. It's genuinely more believable than them being able to speak fluent English for no reason. Man, I just love this movie. For every mistake it makes, it does two things right. Okay, so by now you're probably wondering why I left a very important character out of the character section earlier. Well, that's because I thought he'd fit well into this segment. So, let's discuss our main villain. Rourke is a great villain. He's not really three-dimensional or compelling, but he is unique for Disney and is genuinely interesting to watch. Though he's technically a twist villain, I love how he's heavily hinted at to be evil throughout the film, and there isn't a single moment where the movie pulls a
Bet you didn't expect him to be the bad guy? What's his name again?
I mean, there's even a scene where Helga and Rourke discuss the implications of there being people here. Helga thinks it changes the plan, but Rourke straight up says it changes nothing. This proves that Rourke isn't a gotcha-style villain, and also clearly shows what his motivations are, even if we haven't been told them yet. The movie truly builds legitimate tension throughout its runtime. The audience is just waiting for the moment where Rourke reveals himself to be evil to Milo, which is a plot device I love way more than a tried and true gotcha-style twist villain. Which is also why I love Treasure Planet. So even though Rourke isn't emotionally compelling, his motivation makes him a great villain. So some quick context. One of the main themes of the film is the dangers and implications of colonialism. Disney is no stranger to covering themes like this, however, I feel it fits best into this film. Throughout the film, the characters all make it very clear why they're going to Atlantis: discovery and fortune. Milo wants to discover what was long thought to be a myth, a discovery that would revolutionize the world as we know it. Almost every other character makes their intentions very, very clear.
Money.
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 I'm gonna say money.
Once our group finds out that there are people still living in Atlantis, Milo becomes interested in learning about them and their culture, with some motivation from Rourke, but doesn't seem to think about the other members of the group and what they must be thinking. We find out that the other mercs are still only interested in the money. We also see that they're still following Rourke and they're going to take the heart of Atlantis to the surface. Milo tries to tell them that the heart is keeping the people alive, but Rourke doesn't seem to care and still intends to plunder. This might seem standard for an animated kids movie, but really think about this for a moment. Disney, the company that very rarely will tackle a realistic villain without making them so over-the-top evil it loses its nuance. The company that desperately doesn't want you to think about their past controversies or any bad part of history they gloss over at all. The same company that didn't address or start changing its modern problematic imagery until the mid-2010s. The company that also made fucking Pocahontas, the movie that tried to make a both sides bad argument about Europeans colonizing the Native Americans, made a movie that has a realistic colonizer as the main villain in 2001? This is an anomaly. It's a miracle. And this has largely been forgotten? Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm glad this movie found its fans and it's being talked about again, but I still feel like just not enough people are talking about Rourke and the themes of colonialism in this movie. As I alluded to earlier, Rourke is not the best Disney villain, but he is certainly one of the most realistic. And the best part about this, on top of him being a realistic colonizer not caring about the natives he's killing through greed, the movie doubles down and calls out colonialism as a whole with some impeccable dialogue.
Mercenary? I prefer the term adventure capitalist.
You think it's some kind of a diamond. I thought it was some kind of a battery, but we're both wrong. It's their life force. That crystal is the only thing keeping these people alive. You take that away and they'll die.
Well, that changes things. Helga, what do you think?
Knowing that, I'd double the price.
I was thinking triple. Academics never want to get your hands dirty. Think about it. If you gave back every stolen artifact from a museum, you'd be left with an empty building. We're just providing a necessary service to the archaeological community.
I mean, it was one thing to have Rourke do the things he does, but to have dialogue like this that explicitly speaks to the audience, mind you, an audience mainly comprised of children who haven't learned about these things yet, and not only is it true, but the audience can only interpret it as true because nobody refutes it? This scene alone makes the movie 10 times better and solidifies Atlantis as the anti-Pocahontas. It also solidifies Rourke as one of the best Disney villains and certainly the most realistic. And that ending climax just goes so hard. The action's exciting, even Rourke's death is awesome. It's just so raw, so brutal, and it's one of the few times where the Disney hero is directly responsible for the villain's death. Normally in kids' movies, they have the villain fall to their deaths because they don't want to make the hero directly responsible. But no, Milo not only kills Rourke, but he also double taps him. I mean, that's just fucking awesome. Even Helga kinda does something for once in the rest of the movie. It's, again, an anomaly and a miracle this movie was able to tackle these themes like this. I just can't get enough of it. Oh my god. But as good as that climax is, it's this scene right here, that might be one of my favorite scenes in Disney history, maybe in animation history. It truly solidified Rourke as a fantastic villain. I could go on, genuinely. I probably should go on actually, but this video is already too long, and you all get the point. Unfortunately, this film didn't get the love it deserved when it was released. I know the box office doesn't always directly correlate to quality, trust me, I know. But it is truly a shame that this movie bombed at the box office. It didn't even get good reviews upon release. I guess the world just wasn't ready. So in conclusion, should you watch this movie? Well, I mean, I just spoiled the whole thing. But even then, it's still worth watching. If you've already seen it and didn't like it, give it another try. Watch it again with a different lens, it might connect with you better. If you've already seen it and like it, go to your TV right now and watch it again. It's that good. Hey, so I'm done talking about the movie. This next segment is going to be a little personal, so if you don't want to hear anything like that, then you can stop watching here. So I just want to explain why it took me so long to make another video after my Wish review. Firstly, I never expected that video to get nearly as many views as it did, so I thank you all for that, genuinely. Secondly, almost immediately after my Wish video, I plan on making a new video, which isn't this one. Before I started, however, I had an oral surgery. I was on strong pain meds for the next few days, which made me a little loopy. Despite this, I wanted to make a new video, so while still on my pain meds, I wrote the entire script and recorded all the audio for the next video. As you can imagine, the script wasn't good, but I decided to make the video despite this. Unfortunately, not too long after this, we suffered a heavy loss in our family, so I had to take some time off school, work, and making videos to be with my family. With all this adding up, more schoolwork because finals were coming, losing a family member, and this bad script, I decided to put that video on the shelf, and it is still currently unfinished. I doubt I will ever release it. I only want to give you guys the best, and that video was far from my best work. After that, I just kind of lost motivation to do anything that wasn't school or work, so I stopped making videos. But enough time has passed. I legitimately miss making content, so I decided to come back and make a video I was actually passionate about. So that's my sob story. If you made it to the end, why? But in all seriousness, thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time with my next Disney review. Stay safe!